Chapter 1928. Facing the Nine Heavens tea house, everyone was deep in thought. Li Changzhe thought that Chu Shuling had already entered the tea house. In the end, even the most talented high school student was trapped outside the tea house. Li Changzhe was shocked. It seemed that it would be difficult to break through the door of the Nine Heavens tea house with an ordinary spell. Chu Shuling's meteor flaming palm was swallowed up as soon as it got close to the door. Of course, Chu Shuling didn't give up completely. His expression darkened, and he looked like he was going to break through the door by himself. "Big brother Li, what should we do?" everyone around him asked. Even though they could be considered outstanding among the younger generation, facing Chu Shuling, they couldn't help but tremble with fear. To many high school students, Chu Shuling was a top-notch expert. Apart from Li Changzhe, no one else dared to talk to him directly. "Don't worry. Brother Chu has his own ideas. Let him try first. With Brother Chu's high realm, if he can't break through, then we have no hope at all. At a time like this, we should stand aside quietly and watch Brother Chu fight. We can also learn from his battle experience," Li Changzhe said. His words sounded like those of an old fox. There was almost no fault to be found. In fact, it made Chu Shuling feel a little comfortable, but the problem was that after this speech, the pressure fell on Chu Shuling. Li Changzhe had put such a high hat on him in front of so many people. If he still couldn't think of a way to break through, then he would be the one embarrassed. Crack! Suddenly, a shocking electromagnetic arc appeared between Chu Shuling's palms. In an instant, Chu Shuling's aura skyrocketed. The strong oppressive feeling made everyone around him take a few steps back. Everyone was shocked. This was already the battle strength of a peak late-stage golden core cultivator. Rumor had it that Chu Shuling would soon break through to nascent soul, but no one believed it. Now, after releasing his aura, the oppressive feeling it brought directly proved how powerful Chu Shuling was. No wonder he was the #1 cultivator among high school students. At that moment, the electromagnetic field in Chu Shuling's palm surged. He controlled the magnetic field and turned the electromagnetic field into electric arcs, accurately striking his own body. This was a technique that used electromagnetic fields to stimulate acupoints, causing Chu Shuling's muscles to swell up in a short instant. Chu Shuling untied the upper half of his black robe and tied it around his waist. The bulging muscles on his upper body let out sizzling electric arcs. Those muscles were like sponges that kept absorbing water. After they swelled up, they were compressed back into Chu Shuling's body. In a short period of time, after repeated training, Chu Shuling's body was finally maintained at a body that wasn't overly muscular. Using electromagnetism to stimulate acupoints to achieve 3 stages of compression? Brother Chu is so fierce. Li Changzhe clicked his tongue as he watched from the side. At the same time, he couldn't help but applaud. He wasn't stingy with his compliments. At the same time, he was astonished by Chu Shuling's exaggerated electromagnetic control. As expected of a genius who was proficient in all elements. Boom! In the next moment, Chu Shuling made his move. After 3 stages of compression, his entire body was as firm as a rock. This time, he didn't use any spells to attack. Instead, he used pure physical strength to fight against the tea house's door. This was a punch that had accumulated an extreme amount of power. It tore through the air towards the tea house's door. With Chu Shuling's current realm, such a punch could split mountains. His speed was too fast. The surrounding people couldn't even see the trajectory of Chu Shuling's punch. This punch had already accurately landed on the tea house's door. However, just when everyone thought that the tea house's door would be destroyed by Chu Shuling's punch, a golden vortex suddenly appeared on the door. Chu Shuling's fist seemed to have punched into a ball of cotton. Then, his entire body was sucked into the door along with his punch. I see. Seeing that Chu Shuling was sucked into the Nine Heavens tea house's door, Li Changzhe also understood. He immediately smiled. It seems that this tea house's door has a strength standard. If the tea house's door recognizes one's strength, one will be directly sucked in. After understanding the rules, the remaining people were all eager to give it a try. To put it bluntly, this was a test of strength. They couldn't use magic directly, but they could follow Chu Shuling's example and use magic to stimulate their bodies, increase their physical strength, and finally force their way in. At the same time, Li Changzhe thought that they actually didn't need to be as strong as Chu Shuling's. There had to be a middle ground. If they had to reach Chu Shuling's level to get in, most of them would have to squat in front of the tea house. After a brief moment of thought, the high school students outside the tea house began to show off their abilities. Their method was the same as Chu Shuling's. First, they used magic or other means to increase their strength. Standing in front of the door, Li Changzhe tried to turn himself into mist again and enter through the crack in the door. In the end, after he entered, he was directly sent back to his original spot. This confirmed Li Changzhe's idea that whether or not they could enter the tea house was essentially determined by the strength test. At the same time, Jing Heqiu and Wang Ling also arrived at the scene. The two of them stood on the eaves and quietly watched everything unfold in front of them. Wang Ling ate a crispy noodle snack as he watched the crowd in front of him try their best to break down the door. Big Brother Wang. Jing Heqiu opened his mouth. That's right, he directly called Wang Ling Big Brother with an expression that looked like he wanted to cry but had no tears. Entering the Vermilion Bird Gate was actually also a test, but when he brought Wang Ling to the door, he realized that there was no time, and Wang Ling didn't seem to be making a move. In order to not waste time, he had no choice but to use his authority to directly take Wang Ling past the Vermilion Bird Gate. He was truly convinced by Wang Ling, and he couldn't find a reason to be convinced. Calling Jing Heqiu Big Brother Wang, in such a sorrowful tone already showed how helpless he was at the moment. As the head of Essence Search Yard, he had seen all sorts of extraordinary geniuses, but now he had to coax Wang Ling to participate in the competition. If word got out, where would he put his old face? Chewing his crispy noodle snack, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He felt that this group of people was very strange. Since they had invited him to the tea house, they had sealed the door with a secret spell and wouldn't let him in if his strength wasn't up to standard. This behavior was no different from taking off one's pants to fart. At that moment, Wang Ling stood on the eaves and looked down at the crowd doing their best to show off their abilities, and felt a little helpless in his heart. Big Brother Wang, I've already helped you pass the Vermilion Bird Gate. How about you participate in this door-breaking operation? Jing Heqiu was about to cry. He was very anxious that Wang Ling wouldn't participate from beginning to end. Door-breaking operation? Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. Oh, it turned out that he didn't need to ensure that the tea house's door was intact, he could even break it down. Okay, he understood. Chapter 1929. Wang Ling was still observing the situation. He had already completely understood the secret spell that had been used on Nine Heavens Tea House's door. This was a test of physical strength. In other words, as long as you didn't use magic, you could use other physical attacks to break in. Rip. A girl in a ranger-style school uniform was clearly aware of this as well. She stood in front of the tea house's door and pulled back her bow. The golden arrow was simple and unadorned. It scraped against the air with an ear-piercing sound as it traveled through the air in an incomparably beautiful trajectory. Finally, it nailed itself firmly to the door of Nine Heavens Tea House. After a moment, the door directly swallowed the arrow. Good arrow. It's only a sliver away from the predetermined standard, and it'll be certified. Jing Heqiu sighed as he stood next to Wang Ling in the distance. From a distance, he recognized that this young archer was Zhang Linyan from Sakura Sky High School. Sakura Sky High School was ranked third among the cultivation high schools in the country, which was also the school that Xian Xinqing had been at before he transferred. The students who could study there all had extraordinary family backgrounds and identities. However, Sakura Sky High School students were generally very low-key, and the school adopted a closed education system. That was to say, although they were among the top 3 in the nation, they were very different from schools like St. Sciences and Peking University, which were active on social media channels all year round and used traffic to create stars. Sakura Sky High School students were generally ruthless and kept a low profile. Zhang Linyan in front of them was the best example. She hadn't said a word from beginning to end, and seemed to have no presence, but in fact, she had amazed the world with one brilliant feat. It was clear that Zhang Linyan hadn't used all her strength in that arrow just now. Her black hair fell to her waist as she raised her bow again, looking valiant and formidable. In that instant, the breathtaking feeling of Zhang Linyan's attack even overwhelmed the exuberant Li Changzhe. In front of the tea house, everyone held their breath as they stared at this scene. Rip! This was the second arrow. The wind howled and tore the earth apart, and the flags on the old-fashioned gatehouses on the old street fluttered in the wind. Some of the signs couldn't even withstand the pressure of the wind and were directly blown apart by the arrow. This time, Zhang Linyan's arrow successfully pierced the door of the Nine Heavens tea house, and she was immediately verified. Her entire body turned into particles of light and disappeared on the spot, then was sucked into the vortex formed in front of the Nine Heavens tea house. Wang Ling's expression was cold. From beginning to end, he and Jing Hechio had been standing on the eaves. He already understood what Jing Hechio meant, and it didn't matter if they broke down the door. But after all, there were still other people taking the test here. Based on his years of education, he decided to wait and see. After all, once he broke through the door, the group of people behind him would no longer have the chance to participate in the test. As expected of Sister Zhang. This archery skill is superb. Li Changzhe sighed from the bottom of his heart. He continued to display his simp and smooth style. Wang Ling didn't dislike Li Changzhe, and even thought he was a little interesting. He had already thought of a way to enter the tea house. After all, he could break down the door, so he didn't have to worry about a lot of things. What he needed to think now was how to smoothly break down the door. After all, with Jing Hechio watching him, it would be too arrogant of him to just go up and smash the door. That wasn't good. So after careful consideration, Wang Ling raised one hand. Seeing this scene, Jing Hechio couldn't help laughing. Classmate Wang, if I'm not mistaken, this move of yours should be called the basic attraction spell, right? Seeing this scene, Jing Hechio couldn't help but drop his forehead into his hand. He was a professional, and also the head of Jiutian Essence Courtyard, so he wouldn't laugh so easily, unless he couldn't help it. He could more or less guess what Wang Ling was thinking. It was obvious that Wang Ling wanted to use the basic attraction spell to manipulate a rock or something else to smash down the door, thus achieving his goal of entering Jiutian tea house. Jing Hechio didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He even thought that Wang Ling was too naive. How much force would it take to use the basic attraction spell to throw an object at the door? Forget smashing the door, even hitting someone wouldn't hurt too much. AI, who knew what old Ting saw in this kid, Jing Hechio felt very depressed. He was sighing with his head down when he suddenly heard a loud explosion at the entrance of the tea house. Jing Hechio didn't even have time to react to what had happened before the ground in front of the tea house was already enveloped in smoke and dust from the explosion. What on earth had happened? Jing Hechio was stupefied. He had just been distracted for a moment, and in the end, the door of Jiutian tea house had directly exploded. What was going on? He was simply stupefied. The other school students in front of the tea house were just as stupefied as him. Because they had just seen an unbelievable scene. Just a minute ago, under everyone's watchful eyes, they had seen Li Changzhe's entire body directly float up, and then slam his head against the door of Jiutian tea house. Using his head to directly slam the door with immense force was very much in line with Li Changzhe's usual idiotic style. F***K, did Brother Li slam his head against the door? How hard must his head be to be able to smash it open? Some high school students exclaimed in disbelief. Maybe he ate too many crabs and has more calcium, so his head is harder, someone said. But I really didn't expect him to use his head to smash the door. Also, the force was too strong. The remaining force of Sister Zhang and Senior Brother Chu's attack seemed to have been absorbed by the tea house's door. Why did the door directly collapse when it was Brother Li's turn? Gong Xian was also shocked. After a blank stare, he said, maybe the absorbed force hasn't been digested in time, so when Li Changzhe smashed his head against the door, the force overflowed? Hiss, I think that's a little far-fetched. Titan High's Zhu Hanyun said. What did you think of? Demon subduing High's Gao Tianming asked. No, I just felt a trace of a familiar aura when Brother Li used his head to smash the door. But that aura has now disappeared. Looks like it wasn't an illusion. I also felt the same way. Gao Tianming nodded with a deep expression. Everyone discussed spiritedly in front of the collapsed door. What they couldn't understand was that the moment Li Changzha's body floated into the air, the expression on his face had clearly been one of horror. It seemed that he hadn't been prepared, and didn't even have time to ask a question before he directly slammed into the tea house door in the next second. So now, when Jing Hechio came back to his senses, he saw this huge explosion in front of the tea house. The tea house door used for the test had been blown down. Furthermore, two people had directly disappeared from the scene. One was Li Changzha, who had slammed the door. And the other was Wang Ling, who had been standing next to Jing Hechio all this time. Chapter 1930. Jing Hechio had no idea how on earth Wang Ling had succeeded in breaking through the door. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. In the end, he came to the conclusion that Wang Ling's primer spell most likely hadn't attracted an object, but a person. In other words, Wang Ling had used the primer spell to send himself in, and had predicted that Li Changzha would use his head to break through the door, so the moment Li Changzha broke through the door, Wang Ling had sucked himself into Li Changzha's body. That had to be it. Jing Hechio was flabbergasted. He felt that there was no other reasonable explanation. So now, had he already gone in? Jing Hechio looked at the time. It was now 23:50 in the evening, less than 10 minutes until the original time for breaking through the door. But the door was already in pieces. If the first batch of invited students hadn't been able to complete the test, they would definitely complain. Jing Hechio had to first think of a way to coordinate with them, and then arrange for a follow-up test. At the very least, he had to let the remaining people split the last 10 minutes equally to complete the test. Jing Hechio had no way of contacting Old Ting in advance, but he had finally completed the task of sending Wang Ling in, even if he didn't know exactly how Wang Ling had gotten in. But when it came to Wang Ling, he had always held him in contempt. Before breaking through the door of the tea house, Wang Ling had already noticed with his king's eye that the passage behind the tea house door wasn't connected to the tea house itself, but to an alternate space. It was similar in nature to a united core world. To put it bluntly, this alternate space was like a giant beehive, each part of which had been provided by a different person, and in the end, had been combined into a giant space. Furthermore, Wang Ling could sense the nature of this united core world. This was a giant space that had been synthesized using modern scientific and technological means, and was a world that had been created through continuous research into the intrinsic spirit field combined with modern cultivation technology. To put it simply, this world was like a giant jigsaw puzzle, but it was very difficult for one cultivation country to complete it. Thus, Wang Ling concluded that this world had been born from the joint efforts of various cultivation countries. Each country had provided a fragment of the world, and then pieced it together to form this united world. In some sense, this was also a manifestation of the value of a community of shared human destiny. Wang Ling was a little astonished. He actually hadn't expected modern cultivation technology to actually reach this point. Of course, in terms of spatial hardness, this artificially synthesized joint core world sturdiness had yet to reach the standard of a normal core world. Perhaps it was because it was pieced together, causing its structure to be unstable. However, such a large world was already very shocking. Wang Ling and Li Changzha had come in together, but after entering this strange space, he felt that Li Changzha had been teleported away, and his sense of time and space had become blurry. When he came back to his senses, he was already standing in a primeval forest. Li Changzha was nowhere to be seen, but he wasn't too far away. If Wang Ling wanted to, he could directly follow his aura and meet up with Li Changzha. At that moment, he looked up at the sky, which was a screen of text. The first line read, "Welcome to the Spirit Realm." The second line read, "Countdown return to 23:59, Spiritual Realm?" Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. This was probably the name given to this world by the people who had created it. In fact, it was essentially an core world. However, it was possible that cultivators on Earth hadn't reached the highest realm yet to be able to create an core world, so they still couldn't understand what on earth the thing they had created using scientific means was. Wang Ling chuckled in his heart, feeling that this was a little ironic. So he, Li Changjia, Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan were the first to enter the spirit realm, and they were faced with this huge primeval forest. Could it be that they were supposed to explore this place? Survive for a day? Wang Ling didn't think that was possible. He had already participated in many survival games. Even if he didn't use the Great Fortune spell, his natural gas luck would naturally give him an advantage. At that moment, facing the vast primeval forest in front of him, Wang Ling was a little at a loss. After coming to the spirit realm, he noticed that a ring of dust had inexplicably appeared on his wrist. With a light touch, the dust would fall off, and he didn't know what it meant. Closing his eyes, Wang Ling expanded his spiritual senses. After locating Chu Shuling, Zhang Linyan and Li Changjia, he decided to move closer to them first. He was afraid that someone was watching him, so he didn't dare use the teleportation spell, and walked over. In front of a small river, Wang Ling saw Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan from a distance. They had found Li Changjia, but he was unconscious and foaming at the mouth. Why did he faint? Zhang Linyan frowned and motioned for Chu Shuling to carry Li Changjia away. Chu Shuling had a look of disgust on her face, but she didn't complain at all. It was only then that Wang Ling awkwardly realized that these three people seemed to have an electronic bracelet on their wrists. It should be something issued by the government, and was used to monitor the data of the operation. That was to say, Wang Ling also had one. Furthermore, it had been put on the moment he had passed through the door of Nine Heavens Tea House. Unfortunately, this electronic bracelet was too fragile and hadn't been able to withstand Wang Ling's test, and it had been destroyed before he had even landed. That was why Wang Ling saw a ring of dust on his wrist. It was the corpse left behind after the electronic bracelet had turned to dust. Wang Ling sighed. He didn't know if he should pay for damaging a government item, but now he finally knew why Zhang Linyan and Chu Shuling hadn't been able to find him. There were too many factors that could interfere with spiritual senses in this vast primeval forest. Although the two of them were already considered very strong among young people, they still couldn't use their spiritual senses as freely as Wang Ling could to directly locate someone. On the other hand, this electronic bracelet had actually been issued by the government to confirm a person's position. But it had now been destroyed by Wang Ling, which gave him a headache. There was no other way. Wang Ling could only imitate them. He casually twisted off a rattan and wrapped it around his wrist, then used the King's Eye illusion spell to directly replicate an electronic bracelet. Because Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan hadn't noticed him from start to finish, Wang Ling felt very embarrassed. He followed the two of them until they finally reached their campsite in the spirit world. It was a very simple-looking wooden hut with an awe-inspiring Huaxiao national flag fluttering in the wind above it. Chapter 1931. This was the only building that Wang Ling could see with the naked eye. It was a very simple wooden hut, but it gave him an infinite sense of security. Especially when he saw the cultivation country's flag fluttering in the wind, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and awe. Wang Ling felt that most of his peers probably felt the same way when they saw this flag. While he was in a daze, there was a whoosh as an arrow pierced through the air through the window of the wooden hut. Wang Ling's face was expressionless as he raised his sword fingers to firmly clamp down on the arrow. He deliberately released his aura to Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan, and just as Wang Ling had expected, these two people weren't too vigilant, and Zhang Linyan very quickly fired the arrow as a test. Wang Ling slowly walked out from behind the thick tree with the arrow in his hand. When Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan in the other wooden hut saw the same electronic bracelet on Wang Ling's wrist, their expressions were also abruptly blank. Judging from their reactions, they should have known that there would actually be 4 people entering the spirit world this time, but they clearly hadn't expected the 4th person to actually be someone from number 60 high. There hadn't been a single person from number 60 high at Vermilion Bird Sect earlier, so how had Wang Ling come in? Zhang Linyan felt it was very strange, but Wang Ling was clearly their teammate now, so she had no choice but to speak up and invite him in. She was the first to break the deadlock. "Student, come in." Throughout the entire process, Chu Shuling maintained a pondering expression on her face. Although Zhang Linyan hadn't used her full strength in that arrow just now, the speed of the arrow was still extremely fast. An arrow shot by an early-stage gold core cultivator was actually caught by a foundation establishment cultivator. Chu Shuling vaguely felt that something wasn't right. Wang Ling frowned. Ignoring the strange look in Chu Shuling's eyes, he directly followed Zhang Linyan into the wooden hut. Wang Ling was a little stunned by the scene in the wooden hut. Because there was actually an elevator in the wooden hut that could hold up to 20 people. Furthermore, the elevator only had one down button, which meant that there was another space under their feet. In addition, on the wall beside the glass elevator, there was a 32-inch LCD screen. Aside from displaying the countdown for their trip, there were also the words, "Underground Trial Ground Number 1, 412, written on it. Stop looking. It's obvious that our mission this time is to take the elevator down to the so-called Underground Trial Ground Number 1. Zhang Linyan said, the 412 on the side should be referring to the number of people. This training field needs at least 4 people to activate, and the maximum number of people is 12 at a time. Wang Ling nodded secretly. It felt like this layout was a bit like a dungeon in a game. There were 4 of them here, so they could start this dungeon quest. This also explained why Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan seemed like there was a 4th being in the spirit realm. After all, with the minimum number of people, no matter how the higher-ups arranged, they would definitely ensure that at least 4 people would enter the spiritual realm this time. There shouldn't be anyone else coming in. Chu Shuling said coldly. Both he and Zhang Linyan actually didn't know that Wang Ling had already destroyed the door outside, but the invitation clearly stated that the deadline was 0:00 in the real world. It had already been more than 10 minutes since they had arrived in the spiritual realm. Calculating the time, the rest of the people probably wouldn't be able to make it here in time. For now, only the 4 of them could enter. But even so, they still lacked Li Changzhe's combat strength. Judging from the swelling on Li Changzhe's head, Zhang Linyan guessed that Li Changzhe had probably rammed his head in. He had rammed his head in, but in the end, he had knocked himself out, a little reckless. But that was Li Changzhe's usual style. Wang Ling had no choice but to help Li Changzhe up and carry him on his back. For him, this didn't take much effort. You don't seem to like talking, but I didn't expect you to be so warm-hearted. Zhang Linyan instantly liked Wang Ling a little more for taking the initiative. Wang Ling, in fact, it wasn't that Wang Ling wanted to carry Li Changzhe, but in this situation, he couldn't directly use healing spells to reduce Li Changzhe's swelling, otherwise he would look a little guilty. On the other hand, he felt that he was the main reason Li Changzhe had fainted. He was just carrying him for a while, and along the way, he would look for an opportunity to wake Li Changzhe up. Chu Shuling crossed his arms the whole time, maintaining his usual aloof and disdainful attitude. He didn't know which number 60 high school student Wang Ling was, but number 60 high school was after all ranked in the lower 30s, and Chu Shuling had never considered this kind of ranking an opponent. Come on in. He sighed, pressed the button for the elevator, and walked in first. He then glanced at Wang Ling, who was carrying Li Changzhe. You're from number 60 high, right? Don't hold us back. Wang Ling remained silent and completely ignored Chu Shuling's words. As a result, the atmosphere in the elevator dropped to freezing point. Caught in the middle, Zhang Linyan felt like she was stuck between a rock and a hard place. She could only try to find a topic to talk about. This Li Changzhe, don't you think he's stupid? In her heart, she hoped that Li Changzhe would wake up sooner. After all, she wasn't familiar with Wang Ling and Chu Shuling, and Li Changzhe was the only one who could talk to Chu Shuling. On the other hand, in a team environment, a member of the atmosphere team was needed to lighten the mood. And Li Changzhe clearly belonged to this atmosphere team. Wang Ling actually felt a little sorry for Zhang Linyan. He could tell that she was trying very hard to find a topic to talk about, but Chu Shuling was cold and aloof, and she didn't like to talk. She was like a penguin caught between 2 pieces of frozen soil, so embarrassed that she could dig out a map of the entire spirit world with her toes in the elevator. It was only a few dozen seconds of elevator ride, but for the first time, Zhang Linyan felt like there was no love left in the world. Ding! You have arrived at Underground Trial Field Number 1. As the elevator doors slowly opened, Wang Ling and the others were once again horrified by the scene in front of them. The elevator doors were embedded in a huge tree, and in front of a huge bonfire, a group of young foreign cultivators with all kinds of hair and eye colors were doing all kinds of exotic dances around the bonfire. They were wearing the uniforms of their respective schools. Some of their uniforms were dirty and tattered, but from the armbands on their arms, it was still possible to tell which cultivation country they were from. Chu Shuling looked at the scene in front of him in astonishment. He remembered hearing about something called the Spirit World Project from Dai Tianchun, the headmaster of St. College. Rumor had it that it was an independent secret land set up by the Fine Search Institute of various countries to quickly groom the younger generation of cultivators. Chu Shuling never thought that this would actually be true. Of course, there was one thing he couldn't understand. It was that this group of foreign cultivators in front of him seemed to have been in this world for a very long time. What on earth was going on? I understand. At that moment, Zhang Linyan frowned and said solemnly, "The countdown outside is actually a countdown to clearing the stage. We have to clear the stage within the time limit, otherwise we'll have to stay here until the next group enters the Spirit World trial field and clears it." Chapter 1932. When Zhang Linyan came to this conclusion, the surrounding high school students all looked at her strangely. In fact, they admired Zhang Linyan's keen insight and analytical skills. After all, based on previous experience, it had taken several groups of cultivators from different countries a long time to figure out the current situation. Of course, there had also been language problems. But Zhang Linyan was different. As soon as she landed, she had directly analyzed half of the situation with her keen insight and observation skills as an archer. Not only that, both Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan were able to communicate without any obstacles. They had experience in many competitions abroad, and were already very proficient in language communication. Furthermore, after arriving here, many of the trapped high school students were Chu Shuling's fans. "My God, Chu Shuling, it's you. We're saved now, oh, my God." A high school student whose skin was as black as a coal briquette sighed with emotion in heavily accented English. Chu Shuling actually didn't have any impression of this person, but after all, they were in front of so many people, and he was very concerned about his image. Furthermore, in order to extract useful information, he immediately changed his tense expression and started to communicate with the crowd in a very friendly and cordial manner. Zhang Linyan's forehead was covered in sweat. It turned out that Chu Shuling could talk. He changed his attitude faster than flipping a page. Thinking this, she glanced at Wang Ling on the other side. After putting Li Changzhe down, he sat alone next to Li Changzhe, still looking as if he wasn't interested in anything. Zhang Linyan finally understood what was going on. Chu Shuling was pretending to be mute. Wang Ling was a real mute, but for some reason, Zhang Linyan felt that she liked Wang Ling more. Chu Shuling wore countless masks on his face, and only someone like Li Changzhe, who was naturally familiar with him, could communicate without any obstacles. Wang Ling and Chu Shuling felt tired just talking half a word more. Both of them were outstanding high school students in Huaxiu Nation, and in a very short time, they were able to obtain a lot of useful information. Chu Shuling in particular had obtained a lot of useful information from that briquette high school student from an African cultivation country. Wang Ling pretended to be indifferent, but in fact, he was secretly sorting out everyone's information. With his mind-reading ability, he didn't need to ask at all to have a pretty good grasp of the current situation. They were the 10th group to enter trial ground number 1 in the spirit realm. Before they arrived, the total number of students who had entered the trial ground had exceeded 92. These 92 people came from 9 different cultivation countries. Their current location was a desert oasis, and the current test for everyone was to leave this oasis, cross the desert, and reach a distant city, and the mission would be considered completed. It sounded like a simple task, but so far, none of the previous 9 groups had been able to complete it. From the time the first group entered until now, they had been trapped for a total of 16 days, relying on the resources in the oasis to survive until now. Moreover, as more and more people were trapped, the resources of the desert oasis were also facing the situation of exhaustion. Wang Ling. He felt that the mission setting was quite profound. Wang on Wang with Ling. To this point, this oasis was like a comfort zone, and the test of the mission was to make the elite high school students and cultivators from all over the world strive to leave this comfort zone and break out on their own. Unfortunately, the people before him had all failed. Sai, before you came here, the 9 of us set off from different directions, trying to explore the city outside the desert. As long as one team succeeds, the mission will be considered complete. At that moment, Wang Ling heard someone say to Zhang Linyan with a sigh. But you still failed. Zhang Linyan asked, have you summarized the reasons? First, this desert has a certain level of spiritual sense interference ability. There's a high probability that perception-type spells will fail in the desert, and once they fail, it will mislead and interfere with one's judgment. The foreign student replied in fluent English. Secondly, during the entire journey, each of us must keep a clear head. Once someone falls, they'll be sent back to this oasis and start all over again. And the third point is that we keep feeling that the consumption of spiritual power here seems to be greater than before. Although we don't know the reason, every movement we make seems to double the consumption of physical strength and spiritual power. Hearing this, Zhang Linyan suddenly felt puzzled. She frowned and then carefully looked at the spirit fruit on the banana leaves beside the bonfire. It was collected from the oasis by high school students and cultivators from various countries. They were all fruits that Zhang Linyan had never seen before. Chu Shuling also noticed these fruits. He squatted down and took a bite, then immediately spat out the pulp and threw it into the fire along with the fruit. These fruits are delicious, and they're not poisonous. You're wasting them like this, the Briquette brothers said with a pained expression. It's better if you don't eat these spirit fruits, Chu Shuling said. Chu Shuling said, haven't you noticed that although these spiritual fruits can temporarily relieve your tiredness, they will consume your spiritual power and physical strength faster? It's very likely that the reason you can't get out of the desert has something to do with these strange spirit fruits. When the trapped high school students and cultivators heard Chu Shuling's tiger-like analysis, they all looked enlightened. As expected of Chu Shuling, the number 1 genius among Saint Intelligence high school students. Some people sighed with emotion from the bottom of their hearts in a different language. This kind of fancy bootlicking put Chu Shuling in a very good mood. Leave it to me, I'll definitely get out. At that moment, Chu Shuling swept his gaze over everyone. Without another word, he directly summoned his spirit sword and got ready to move. You're alone? Zhang Linyan was shocked and asked hurriedly. I'm more than enough. Chu Shuling walked like the wind as he looked at Zhang Linyan confidently. It wasn't until then that Zhang Linyan realized the pride and arrogance overflowing from Chu Shuling. This person didn't just look down on Wang Ling and Li Changjia, he actually didn't care about Zhang Linyan at all. Zhang Linyan knew that she wouldn't be able to persuade Chu Shuling on her own. He wasn't leaving any way out for himself at all. Zhang Linyan was secretly astonished. If Chu Shuling collapsed on the way and was teleported back, wouldn't he be dead on the spot? But it was clear that Chu Shuling didn't think that would happen at all. Extremely confident, he directly stepped on his spirit sword and flew off like a shooting star in one direction. Then, after 3 hours had passed, everyone saw Chu Shuling turn into a shooting star again as he fell from the sky above the oasis. Moreover, he landed precisely in front of Wang Ling and kowtowed to him. Wang Ling. Chapter 1933. Wang Ling had never thought that Chu Shuling would give him such a big bow. Although the atmosphere had already frozen when Chu Shuling had fallen head first into the ground, the fact that she had returned without any success just explained one thing. That was, it was impossible to break through the desert on the outskirts of the oasis by brute force alone. No matter how much spirit energy you had, if you wanted to be a stubborn lone wolf, you would still end up in failure in the end. After all, the minimum number of people who could enter this map was 4. That was to say, the higher-ups had definitely already sent people to carry out professional experiments to come up with the conclusion that 4 to 12 people were needed. It would be hard to pass if there weren't enough people, but there could also be problems if there were too many people, like the resources in this oasis being consumed at an accelerated rate. As the representative team of Huaxiao Nation, when someone had recognized Chu Shuling, they had thought that they would definitely be able to pass. But now that Chu Shuling had failed, everyone felt a little evil. Zhang Linyan dropped her forehead into her hand. Even she felt a headache coming on. Li Changzhou was still unconscious, and in the end, Chu Shuling had paid the price for her recklessness by fainting as well. At this critical juncture, these two people were definitely unreliable. At that moment, she looked quietly at the youngster in front of her and realized that he was also looking back at her. He still had those standard dead fish eyes that couldn't arouse the slightest bit of interest, and the same impending yet indifferent attitude. She felt that she was becoming more and more curious about Wang Ling, and she really wanted to know how he had opened the teahouse's door. After waiting for a while and seeing that everyone was in low spirits, Wang Ling finally couldn't restrain himself anymore. Seeing that Wang Ling's gaze had been fixed in one direction, Zhang Linyan also looked in that direction. She straightened Chu Shuling, who had already been lying flat on the ground, and finally found a very fine wound on the back of her neck. It was the mark of a beating, and because Chu Shuling was wearing ancient clothes that covered her neck, it was impossible to see it unless she took off her clothes. When she looked at Wang Ling again, the young man had already looked away. Was this a coincidence? Zhang Linyan was suspicious, and somehow felt that Wang Ling was deliberately reminding her. But this new discovery still caused an uproar among the people present. Zhang Linyan heard many of her foreign friends praise her in English, and they all admired her meticulous observation skills. Amazing, classmate Zhang. You actually found such a fine wound. As expected of a famous high school student in Huaxiao Nation. Only Zhang Linyan's face was bright red. To be honest, she was quite embarrassed by the praise, but the truth was that it was all thanks to Wang Ling that this matter had been discovered. After the new discovery, the atmosphere became lively again. Everyone started to check their stamina. No one found the same injury on their stamina as Chu Shuling. In that case, Chu Shuling wasn't sent back to the oasis because she ran out of spiritual power. Instead, she was knocked out by someone or a spirit beast. There were so many groups of people marching in the desert, but none of them had ever seen any other living beings. Chu Shuling actually ran into one. This also meant that perhaps Chu Shuling was already very close to the city in the desert. That was why there were creatures guarding the city around the desert. Of course, all of these were just guesses. However, following these guesses, they could at least prove one thing. The time limit to complete the mission within 24 hours was not as strict as he had imagined. After all, it had only taken Chu Shuling 3 hours to solve a problem that no one had encountered before. The key was still to find a way. Using Chu Shuling as a unit of measurement, Zhang Linyan estimated that under normal circumstances, it would take 3 to 8 hours for someone like Chu Shuling to reach the level guarded by the living beings without any interference. She wasn't sure about Wang Ling's level of spirit energy, but if Chu Shuling could do it in 3 hours, Zhang Linyan felt that she could do it in 5 or 6 hours, while others might take longer. We need to reformulate our plan. Also, whether we can break through this will require everyone's full cooperation, Zhang Linyan said after taking a deep breath. She had the meticulous thinking of an archer and a natural sense of direction. Even if she didn't use perceptual spells, Zhang Linyan could still use other methods to determine her position. So for Zhang Linyan, there were only 2 problems she had to deal with. One was the replenishment of her spirit energy, and the other was how she should defend herself against those creatures that might attack. Compared with Chu Shuling's stubborn lone wolf style, Zhang Linyan was actually better at arranging the resources she had at hand. At that moment, Zhang Linyan subconsciously followed Wang Ling's gaze to the neatly moving ants on the ground carrying food back to their nests, as if she had suddenly realized something. That's right, the spirit injection spell, Zhang Linyan said as she picked up a cobblestone. This was a very basic spell. Simply put, it was to transfer the spirit energy in one's body to someone else or to concentrate it on an object, so that the object would be filled with spirit energy in a short period of time. The spirit energy infused in this way could in fact be extracted. There were so many people in the oasis now. As long as each of them infused a bit of spirit energy into this cobblestone, it would be a huge amount of energy. This was tantamount to creating a spirit energy power bank on the spot. Of course, this kind of temporary power bank also had a drawback, and that was that the spirit energy would dissipate bit by bit over time. Thus, Zhang Linyan had to calculate the amount of spirit energy that would dissipate. Just as Zhang Linyan was getting ready to carry out her next plan to leave the oasis, a gust of wind suddenly blew, and the leaves on the trees swayed in the wind. More than 1,000 pinhole cameras hidden in the layers of leaves were focusing on Zhang Linyan from different angles. Of course, a very small number of them were still focused on Wang Ling. Wang Ling had long been aware of this, which was why he hadn't made a move, and had instead used hints to warn Zhang Linyan. He had initially thought that as long as he kept a low profile, these cameras wouldn't focus on him. But the people who had come in as part of Group 10 were impressively the focus of the cameras. Whether it was him or the unconscious Li Changzhe or Chu Shuling, they all had fixed cameras, which was a little annoying. At the same time, outside of the cameras, in the command post of Jiutian Academy. In front of a monitor, Ting Luken, the head of Jiutian Tea House and the chief commander of the Earth's Core Project, was stroking his beard as he looked at the image on the monitor. His face was very calm, without the slightest ripple of emotion. At that moment, a man wearing a bamboo hat stood behind him with a murderous aura. The black gauze in front of the hat completely covered his face. At that moment, he had already pressed the muzzle of a spirit power revolver called Golden Wind against Ting Luchen's waist. "Old Ting, I hope you don't play any tricks. I want you to release your most powerful map spirit beast and get rid of this bunch of people. I'll give you 1 more hour. If no one among these high school students is dead by then, I'll shoot one of your academy's people every 10 minutes. Chapter 1934. The criminals who had suddenly broken into Nine Heavens Elite Search Yard's command center were very strong, and they had clearly come prepared. Fortunately, as employees of the Elite Search Yard's command center, although this kind of sudden situation wasn't common, they had rehearsed it before. Everything seemed to be under the control of the criminals, but it was actually still under control. Everyone kept a cool head and explained in silence. All the staff members of the Elite Search Yard crouched on the ground with their hands over their heads, holding their breaths as they waited for Elderting's next command. The criminals were very strong, but given Elderting's realm, there was no way he wouldn't be able to counter them. This shrewd old man didn't say a word, as if he was waiting for something. At the same time, he completely cooperated with the criminals, and increased the difficulty of Trial Field Number 1 through the Elite Search Yard's Spirit World operating system. This is already the highest difficulty. After adjusting, Ting Luken said, "As you know, these are the most outstanding students from all over the world. There's a limit to the difficulty of the spirit beasts in Trial Field Number 1, and they might not be able to kill them. Unless there's a way to dispatch a higher-level spirit beast to Trial Field Number 1. Then do it." The voice of the leader of the criminals came from under the bamboo hat, and he pointed his gun at Ting Luchen's waist again. "I'm warning you, Elder Ting, don't play tricks." Ting Luken said expressionlessly, "It's not that I don't want to cooperate, but this is how the original system was set up. I can't directly adjust it. I can only operate according to the existing system, and dispatching spirit beasts from the advanced trial field requires a new program code. However, even if everyone here is gathered together, it won't be possible to complete this code in a short period of time. Unless we have outside help." "Who are you looking for?" "His surname is Wang, and he's President Chi's favorite student." Ting Luken laughed. "Don't worry, he doesn't have any realm. He was not a cultivator. Also, you don't have to worry about him divulging information. After all, he's just an ordinary person without any cultivation. You can kill him easily." The man in the bamboo hat was silent for a while, as if he was thinking. In the end, after a fierce internal struggle, he finally agreed to Ting Luchen's request. "Then I'll give you another half an hour. 1.5 hours, that's the deadline. Otherwise, all of you here will die. Elder Ting should be well aware of the destructive power of this golden wind in my hand at close range." This was a clear threat. Of course Ting Luken was well aware of the Golden Wind's power. Given his realm, he wouldn't be injured by a bullet. However, if the bullet hit his body, the spiritual energy triggered by the recoil and explosion would be enough to raise the entire command center as well as everything within 1,000 kilometers to the ground. Nine Heaven Search Yard Spirit World Operating System was a top secret. Ting Luken was also very clear about the goal of this group of villains. In fact, regardless of whether they could fulfill their request or not, the bullet would still be fired. Their original goal was to find one of the high school students in the group. The high school demon cultive sect cultivators teamed to kill. They wanted to kill them all. The reason why he wanted to annihilate this batch of high school students who had just entered was just a way to cover up his real target. After all, these high school students would all die. Even if the news broke out in the end, the public would not pay attention to the specific actions targeted at a particular high school student. They would only define it as an infuriating large-scale terrorist action. Therefore, Ting Luken knew what to do. He had roughly guessed the actions of this group of villains in his heart. However, he did not stop them directly. On the contrary, he followed their wishes and started to increase the difficulty of trial ground number 1. No one noticed. At that moment, Ting Luken was paying special attention to the 1,000-odd surveillance cameras connected to the oasis, and the few that were closely watching Wang Ling. Countdown, 1948, 49. There were less than 20 hours left until trial field number 1 was cleared. Wang Ling sat under the tree for more than half an hour with Chu Shuling lying on his left and Li Changjia on his right. The number 1 and number 2 high school geniuses in the country were lying on either side of him like goalkeepers, and for a moment, Wang Ling's mood was exceptionally complicated. In the past half an hour, in addition to secretly guiding Zhang Linyan, he also counted the leaves in the oasis one by one. Actually, Wang Ling had already noticed when they had just entered the oasis, and knew that these leaves were equipped with tiny pinhole surveillance devices. It was just that he had pretended that nothing had happened, which made it seem like he hadn't noticed it at all. While sitting on the ground, Wang Ling had been looking out of the corner of his eye for the cameras monitoring him. Although there weren't many of them, Wang Ling was sure that the people in front of them had been paying attention to his movements. In other words, Wang Ling's sixth sense was telling him that he was probably already being watched, and that the person watching him probably wasn't a low-level one. He sighed endlessly in his heart. He could only blame himself for being too useless, actually going out just because of a few crispy noodle snack packets. Why couldn't he control his own claws? But there was no other way now. Since he was already here, he could only pretend to cooperate and complete the mission. In any case, there were a lot of people here, and there was bound to be someone he could use as a temporary scapegoat. In Audiobook's absence, he could only develop new people. Then he realized that Li Changjia and Zhang Linyan were actually pretty good. One was more simple-minded, while the other was more astute than Li Changjia, but was a very sensible person. After a few hints from him, Zhang Linyan actually received a little bit of a signal, but Wang Ling's expression had been too natural, and she had no direct evidence to prove that he had been hinting at her. It was like how the protagonists in many famous suspense novels always had a few godly supporting characters who inadvertently hinted at their modus operandi. So Wang Ling's original plan was to use Li Changjia and Zhang Linyan to cover for him at the same time. But the problem was that Li Changjia, this guy, actually hadn't woken up yet. The bump on his head had already gone down, and Wang Ling had treated it when no one was looking when he had carried Li Changjia on his back. Logically speaking, Li Changjia should have woken up long ago. But Li Changjia still hadn't woken up. Wang Ling felt that there was probably only one reason. What was the saying? You could never wake up a person who was pretending to be asleep. In fact, Li Changjia had woken up when he had been lying on Wang Ling's back. But when he remembered that he had fainted after crashing into the tea house's door, he instantly felt like he had lost face. The most important thing was that he had always been hostile toward Wang Ling, and in the end, it had been Wang Ling who had carried him in when he had fainted. For a moment, Li Changjia's heart was filled with guilt at this kind of elegant and noble conduct. He felt that it was better for him to lie flat on his back. It would be too embarrassing if he woke up. Chapter 1935. Covering for Wang Ling had in fact been Wang Ming's task from the very beginning, and Wang Ling had been targeted. As an older brother, Wang Ming naturally had a certain level of vigilance, so the moment Ting Luken had found him, Wang Ming had almost immediately become suspicious. Although this elder Ting had concealed himself very well and had left a few of the thousands of surveillance cameras for Wang Ling, Wang Ming didn't know if it was because of his brother Khan's intuition, but he could still clearly sense Ting Luchen's special intentions. While writing the system according to Ting Luchen's instructions, Wang Ming split off another brainwave to communicate with Jai Yin next to him. The two of them had known each other for a while now, and it could be said that they had a tacit understanding of each other, and they immediately started contacting people to assist Wang Ling. At the same time, as one of Lotus Sun's good sisters, Jai Yin didn't forget to send Lotus Sun a copy of the message. Classmate Wang Ling is under suspicion. And that senior's background isn't ordinary. After receiving the message, Lotus Sun stared at the phone screen with a tight frown. What should we do? Hasn't he been fine all these years and never been exposed? Sun Yinger said in surprise. You can't avoid getting your shoes wet if you always walk by the river. Maybe it's because classmate Wang Ling has participated in too many competitions recently. Lotus Sun guessed. Wang Ling had already done his best to restrain himself in these competitions, big and small, and had basically erased his memory of everything that should have been erased, but the official competition records wouldn't disappear. No matter how little Wang Ling's contribution to the team was, his name was still on the official list in the academic administration system. Lotus Sun felt that it was perhaps that official record that had planted the seed of suspicion in Ting Luken. But there was no point in saying all this now. This was the so-called counter-soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. Back then, she had made up her mind to run the Grey Sect. And very fortunately, Lotus Sun happened to see a familiar name among the 10 teams that had already entered the spirit world. Elsewhere, in the oasis of Test Field No. 1 in the spirit world, Wang Ling could actually sense that Li Changzhe had been playing dead all this time, which made it impossible for him to carry out his plan to shift the blame to Li Changzhe. Zhang Linian's hint had been accepted very smoothly, and she had already organized a team to make spirit energy batteries out of cobblestones. So now, he had to think of a way to help Li Changzhe stand up. Zhang Linyan was still busy when he suddenly saw a female high school student with ear-length hair, an oval face and unusually fair skin walk toward him. Wang Ling felt that this person looked a little familiar, but he couldn't put a name to it. Don't you recognize me, classmate Wang Ling? Wang Ling was very surprised. He hadn't expected this girl to actually communicate with him in fluent Mandarin. Seeing Wang Ling's bewildered expression, the girl didn't beat around the bush, and directly introduced herself. I am Six-Eyed Scarlet Rice. He's the one from Jiudao and high school, nicknamed Sparrow. Wang Ling was stunned. If Six-Eyed Crimson Rice hadn't introduced herself, Wang Ling wouldn't have recognized her at all. This change was too big, but it had only been a few months, right? The pockmarks on the sparrow's face were gone, and her figure was much more robust than before. Most importantly, she had taken off her glasses. Wang Ling really couldn't help it at all. His impression of Sparrow was actually still that of Jiudao and high school. In his memory, she was a computer expert, and very much admired Wang Ming's old V identity. Seeing the puzzled look on Wang Ling's face, Sparrow explained simply, don't misunderstand, I'm still a student of Jiudao and high school. But this time, I'm representing Jiudao and high school. Outside help? Wang Ling suddenly opened his mouth, as reticent as ever. The main reason was that he felt it was a little impolite for the girl to say so much to him in a series of indifferent replies. You can think of it that way. Another reason is to gather some information. My school uniform is from Yamada No High School, which is currently the second-ranked high school on our Sun Island, Sparrow replied in a low voice. She then looked at Li Changzhe, who was still lying on the side pretending to be dead. Making a V sign at Wang Ling, she then began to mouth at him. Old V and cult leader asked me to help you. Wang Ling easily read these words from the shape of Sparrow's mouth. Then, he saw Sparrow take out a stack of golden needles from her pocket and start her performance. Hey, classmate Wang Ling. Li Changzhe still hasn't woken up. Do you think there's a blood clot in his brain? I happen to have learned a bit of acupuncture. Do you want to give him a try? Hearing this, Li Changja's eyelids twitched visibly. But he still had no intention of waking up. After all, compared to losing face, it didn't matter if he suffered a few acupuncture needles. As long as he secretly used spirit energy to seal off his acupuncture points and block the golden needles, he wouldn't feel too much pain. But Li Changja had no idea that Sparrow was a ruthless person. First, she pretended to be very professional as she checked Li Changja's pulse, then abruptly screamed in surprise. "Oh my God, he's too badly injured." Sure enough, there's a blood clot in his brain. Not only is there a blood clot in his brain, it's spreading. I'm afraid that in a few hours, it'll spread to the lower half of his body. After saying this, Sparrow withdrew the golden needles on the side and sighed. In this situation, using golden needles is already useless. The only way to release the blood clot is to use a knife. Quack. Definitely a quack. Hearing this, Li Changja's heart crumbled. Even Wang Ling didn't know why Sparrow had so many tools on her. She was clearly a hacker, but in the end, she had a complete set of tools. He watched anxiously as Sparrow took out a kitchen knife, and was astonished to realize that this kitchen knife was actually intelligent. A keyboard actually appeared on the surface of the kitchen knife. After typing for a while, Sparrow wiped at her sweat. "Don't worry, classmate Wang Ling. I'm not a professional, but the program won't lie, and it'll be very accurate. It's just cutting off an inch or two, it's no problem at all. Wang Ling and Li Changja, I've already programmed this smart kitchen knife. It will start on its own in 3 minutes, and when it's done, it'll directly lock up his HP. You don't have to worry about classmate Li bleeding, you just need to release the blood clot." At that moment, Sparrow covered her mouth and pretended to be in pain. "There's no other way, I hope classmate Li won't blame me after he wakes up." After all, this is all to save his life. It had to be said that Sparrow's acting was so realistic that even Wang Ling believed it. But at that moment, Li Changja actually still didn't show any signs of waking up. Wang Ling knew that Li Changja could most likely tell that Sparrow was trying to goad him into waking up, and he was betting that Sparrow's smart kitchen knife definitely wouldn't work. But what Wang Ling and Li Changja didn't expect was, just 3 minutes later, the kitchen knife actually flew up. Chapter 1936. The moment the kitchen knife flew up, Wang Ling's face was filled with astonishment. This smart black iron kitchen knife flew up in front of them, and as the blade swept past them, there was a crisp clang in their ears. Lying on the ground, Li Changja could even feel the faint sound of the knife cutting through his hair. In that instant, Li Changja felt the hair all over his body stand on end. He had never thought that what Sparrow had said would actually be true, that this kitchen knife could actually fly. At that moment, Li Changja could no longer stay calm. Wang Ling felt that there was a popular online phrase that was most suitable to describe Li Changja's performance at that moment. He couldn't hold it in any longer. It was believed that any boy who faced the same situation as Li Changja would feel the same horror in his heart. He hurriedly got up from the ground with a frightened look on his face. His face had turned purple, like a fish that had been stranded on the beach for a long time. Even the sound of his breathing became extremely rapid. Crack. The knife finally landed 1 centimeter in front of Li Changja's crotch. Sparrow was serious. If he hadn't woken up in time and dodged, this knife would have really turned Li Changja into a leftover old man. Are all girls so vicious nowadays? Li Changja, who was pretending to be asleep, felt a lingering fear in his heart. His cheeks were dripping with sweat as he cursed repeatedly in his heart. "Classmate Li, you're actually awake. I thought you'd never wake up again," Sparrow said in pleasant surprise as she wept excitedly, as if she was really concerned about Li Changja's injury. On the side, Wang Ling called her an expert when he saw her acting skills. Sparrow was too vicious. Although her appearance had changed drastically, after what had just happened, Wang Ling was sure that this was Sparrow herself. She was still as black-bellied and strange as ever, which left people scratching their heads. "Ha ha ha. I just felt like I had a nightmare just now, and then I suddenly woke up with a start. But what's with this kitchen knife? I'm not sure. Li Changja laughed and rubbed the back of his head, the expression on his face extremely awkward. He was playing dumb. If he wasn't playing dumb, if he hadn't played dumb, then Tai Shi would have died. It's alright, classmate Li, the kitchen knife was just an accident. I saw that you didn't wake up. I just wanted to stew something for you. After saying that, Sparrow looked at Wang Ling with a smile. Right, classmate Wang Ling? Li Changja was shocked once again. This woman really knew how to lie without a draft. What kind of stew was that? However, he had no choice but to pretend that he didn't know about these things. Otherwise, he would have to admit that he was pretending to be asleep. Fortunately, Sparrow didn't get to the bottom of it. Her original mission was to wake Li Changja up, and now her mission had been successfully completed. Li Changja was not stupid. Seeing that Sparrow did not continue to ask, he instantly understood that Sparrow was deliberately giving him a way out. After all, the students who could come here were the cream of the crop of high school students in the world, and playing dead in front of them wasn't easy to fool. Furthermore, Li Changja never expected Wang Ling to actually have such a good relationship with foreign students. At first, he had been very hostile to number 60 high and looked down on Wang Ling. He felt that Wang Ling was just a legendary mascot who didn't deserve to compete on the same stage as this group of elite high school students. But from what he could see now, Wang Ling actually wasn't as bad as he had imagined. How did the saying go? Only substitute envoys can attract substitute envoys. In other words, only outstanding people can attract outstanding people. Since Wang Ling could be recognized by elite foreign high school students, he had to be outstanding in some way. Although Li Changja still didn't know how Wang Ling had entered the tea house, nor did he know what was so special about him, the only thing he could say for now was that Wang Ling was a genuine good person. He had carried him on his back all the way to the oasis, and after putting him down under the tree, he had been taking care of him. Every time Li Changja thought of this, he always felt a little ashamed. He had gauged the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. Let me introduce myself. I'm Six-Eyed Scarlet Heezy. With Sparrow's intervention, communication became much easier. Sparrow took the initiative to introduce herself and shake hands with Li Changja. Because the current situation was far more serious than they had imagined. Not only did they have to break through, they also had to think of a way to face an external threat. Furthermore, only Sparrow and Wang Ling knew about this threat. Wang Ling had seen it himself. Out of the corner of his king's eye, he had penetrated the surveillance cameras to verify his previous conjecture, and found out that the command post of Essence Search Yard was currently being hijacked. As for Sparrow, Wang Ming had sent her a message in code, which was a hacker's language that only Sparrow herself could understand. In other words, they were currently being monitored by criminals at the same time. Of course, Wang Ling wasn't completely clueless about this. Given Elder Ting's strength, there was no way he wouldn't be able to take care of those pieces of trash, so Wang Ling understood almost instantly. Elder Tang was testing him. Elder Tang was trying to test him. Big brother, you're finally awake. Seeing that Li Changja had woken up, Zhang Linyan hurried over with a few spirit energy cobblestones that she had just made. The problem of endurance had been solved for the time being. With the spirit energy cobblestones, they didn't need to replenish their spirit energy with those damn spirit fruits in the oasis. She and Li Changja had only exchanged a few words when the ground of the oasis suddenly shook slightly. It was not a big movement, but the people in the oasis with strong senses all felt at the same time that there were many powerful auras gathering from all directions and surrounding the oasis. What's going on? Someone was puzzled. Look! At that moment, Sparrow suddenly pointed at Chu Shuling and shouted. The bruise on the back of Chu Shuling's neck actually glowed with a bright light. A spirit energy mark? At the same time, everyone understood. The moment the spirit beast that had knocked Chu Shuling down had struck her, it had added its own spirit energy mark. It had accurately pinpointed Chu Shuling's position. And now, those spirit beasts were rioting, and following the trajectory of the spirit energy mark, they were heading in the direction of the oasis. What's going on? Why isn't this the same as what we discussed earlier? Zhang Linyan was a little puzzled. Somehow, she felt that the content of the test had changed fundamentally. But she couldn't pinpoint what the problem was. Wang Ling lowered his head in contemplation. Just as he was thinking of a solution, he suddenly heard Sparrow stand up and shout, "Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earthen dam. We can only think of a way to fight. Where are the Grey Sect disciples? We're here. We're here. We're here." In a split second, the high school cultivators from all over the world responded in unison in their own languages. This time, Wang Ling was completely stunned. It turned out that except for the 10th group from Huaxiao Nation who had just entered the spirit world, the remaining high school students were actually all Grey Sect members. And Sparrow, the deputy minister of 9 Paths and the Grey Sect branch, had shockingly become the temporary boss here. Chapter 1937. Almost immediately, Wang Ming and Jai Yin shared the news that Ting Luken was already suspecting Wang Ling. In fact, Wang Ming and Jai Yin had already rehearsed this earlier on in order to deal with how things would develop. Apart from his blood relatives, Jai Yin, Lotus Sun, Odd Zhua, Kumi Ryoko, Zhou Zi, Gu Xuanji, Qin Zong and Xiang Yi currently knew Wang Ling's true strength. Most of the remaining core members of Battle Sect, such as grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Immortal Jinyuan, were in fact still half-baked. Their instincts told them that Wang Ling wasn't just a 16-year-old teenager. Instead, it was a 10,000-year-old demon experiencing the daily life of a high school student. Fortunately, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was one of Wang Ling's few close friends in the cultivation world. Even if he was in a half-imaginative state, he would still tacitly cooperate with Odd Zhua to cover for Wang Ling. His EQ was very high, and his temper was very much to Wang Ling's liking. This was also one of the main reasons why Wang Ling had helped Battle Sect rise back then. But it clearly wasn't appropriate for Ting Luken to be the first to inform a core member of Battle Sect who was in a half-imaginative state about Wang Ling. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary people. Now, Lotus Sun was using the power of the Grey Church to cover for Wang Ling. At the same time, it might be necessary to achieve a two-pronged approach. In this situation, Odd Zhua was needed to coordinate the work. "Master, what's wrong? Why do you look so serious?" At Battle Sect's training ground, Odd Zhua was instructing Zhou Zi in his cultivation of the spirit sword. When he received Jai Yin's message, Zhou Zi saw Odd Zhua's frown and hurriedly asked this question. "There's a problem. Your grandmaster might be suspected by a senior." Odd Zhua didn't hide anything and told Zhou Zi directly. Under his training, Zhou Zi's newly grown legs and body coordination had made great progress. He was no different from a normal person now. He had passed the test of walking, running, and jumping. "Actually, I think it's already a miracle that Grandmaster hasn't been suspected until now." Zhou Zi didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Odd Zhua. "Who on earth is suspecting Grandmaster?" "A senior surnamed Teng. Everyone calls him Elder Teng." "Is his name Ting Luken? You know him? He's the owner of the 9 Heavens Tea House. And he knows me." In fact, Elder Teng was a good person. He was quite concerned about the development of the young people in the cultivation world. "When I broke my leg, he brought tea leaves to our house to visit me," Zhou Zi said. "But you know your grandmaster's situation. He's very strong, yes. But not everyone likes to be shrouded in glory." Odd Zhua sighed. "Living quietly is also a kind of cultivation. I'm afraid you and I won't be able to comprehend this kind of spirit in a short time." "Indeed." Zhou Zi nodded. He knew that he would never be able to reach Wang Ling's heights in his lifetime. But Zhou Zi also had his own cultivation path, which he realized was very similar to Odd Zhua's. That was chivalrous, serving the country and the people. This was also the reason why he had worshipped Odd Zhua and taken him as his master back then. Zhou Zi imagined that if he had great strength, he might take a completely different path from his grandmaster, Wang Ling. For example, taking responsibility for the common people and becoming the benchmark for all the cultivators in the world. As a benchmark, it was impossible for him to take the low-profile path of a reclusive cultivator. When that time came, all the glory of wealth and fame would follow. As the saying went, to wear the crown, one must bear its weight. Josie felt that this was the path he needed to explore in the future. How could he not forget his original intentions and maintain his true colors under these limitless halos? Although they walked different cultivation paths, Josie didn't think that he, Audiobook, and Wang Ling were enemies. The essence of the world was that light and shadow went hand in hand. Some people wanted to be the shadow, and some people wanted to be the light. Where there was light, there was shadow, no one could leave the other. Enchanting is very strong, it won't be easy to fool him. Of course, I don't have much contact with Enchanting. It's just a hunch. Shifu, you have to handle this carefully. After thinking for a while, Josie said, I can handle the training on my own. Grandmaster is in trouble now, so you should go and solve his problem first. Your Shimu is already helping out in secret on the inside. But the outside still needs to be resolved, Audiobook said. Audiobook said, the command center of Nine Heavens Essence Courtyard has been hijacked by a group of villains, and Enchanting is currently being held hostage to manipulate the system. This has caused the test field to deviate from the original script, and they've dispatched even more powerful spirit beasts to attack the high school students taking the test. Hijacked? Josie asked curiously. No way. Enchanting should be very strong. Can they beat him? Very quickly, his eyes lit up, and he said without waiting for Audiobook's reply, Oh. I get it. Enchanting is doing this on purpose, he wants to see Grandmaster's reaction. That's why he arranged this. It could only be said that Josie was Josie in the end. He was indeed extremely smart and had figured it out with just one hint. Audiobook was very satisfied with this analysis. Go on. If I had to solve this outside problem, what would you do if it were you? Since Enchanting is deliberately not doing anything to test Grandmaster, then we'll force him to do it. Not only do we have to force him to do it, we also have to send people to save him. Josie smiled. Enchanting's identity isn't simple, it's reasonable for us to send people to save him. Furthermore, Enchanting is in Songhai City, right? Isn't that within the scope of Battle Sect's authority? I remember that Huaxiao Alliance originally signed a very long security outsourcing agreement with Battle Sect. Hahaha, you're too smart, Z. We're thinking the same thing. As he listened, Audiobook couldn't help laughing. We'll continue with the training later. I'll send Senior Immortal a message first. Tell him to take action immediately. Also, he must be on the highest level of alert. This will show how much importance Battle Sect takes this matter. Roughly 10 minutes later, at Battle Sect's headquarters in Songhai City. In Jingyang Square in front of True Venerated Hall, the primordial horn, which the sect had set up on hundreds of mountain peaks, sounded like the deep cry of a primordial divine beast. In a short period of time, each peak had dispatched a total of 6,000 Battle Sect disciples at or above the Golden Core stage to assemble in the square. 200 elders at or above the nascent soul stage were standing on magic artifacts in formation in the air above the square. This was Battle Sect's first rapid response force after entering Level 1 alert. Battle Sect had already practiced this several times before, but no one expected them to actually be put to use so quickly. It's the sound of the primordial horn, the elders want us to return to the sect quickly. Captain, what do we do now? At that moment, the sect disciples who were carrying out sect missions in Songhai City all raised their heads the moment they heard the primordial horn. Listen to my orders, unless you're on a mission to keep an eye on someone. Everyone else who can return to the sect. Follow me back to the sect immediately. There's going to be a tough battle. Chapter 1938. In the early hours of Wednesday, January 15th, this world-renowned city that never sleeps, Songhai City's brightly lit streets were accompanied by the deep sound of Hongming's horn, adding to the hustle and bustle of the brilliant night. This was the first time since the Golden Foundation's sneak attack on Battle's sect that Battle's sect's disciples were carrying out a large-scale battle plan under the guidance of the official command center. Apart from those who were on essential missions, all the Battle's sect disciples wearing light blue Battle's sect uniforms immediately took out their spirit swords in unison the moment they heard the order. Stepping on their spirit swords, they flew through the city on their swords as they started to return to the sect. Their movements were uniform as they underwent the most rigorous training under Battle's sect's unified guidance. Although Battle's sect hadn't been around for a long time, all its disciples had a sense of collective honor for the sect at all times, which was something that many other modern sects couldn't achieve. Woo! The Hong Meng roar sounded a total of 12 times. When the sound of the Hong Meng roar fell to the ground, the Battle's sect disciples on the Zhengyang Plaza had already neatly formed dozens of square formations. They had gathered from their respective peaks, and some had turned back from the city. The moment they heard Hong Meng, they all assembled, each with a spirit sword on their back and a medicinal gourd at their waists as they waited solemnly. The first batch of rapid response troops has been assembled. Great Elder, please give us your instructions. A head peak elder turned to Fang Xing and asked for instructions. The moment Fang Xing appeared, many of the Battle's sect disciples below felt like their eyes were playing tricks on them, because it was an incomparably young face with a gorgeous face that made many people's hearts ripple. Fang Xing had to appear in the sect in his female form because this would hide his identity as a student in his male form. There were many eyes in the sect, and if he faced them in his male form, it might cause unnecessary trouble. Many of the disciples at the bottom of the mountain hardly ever saw the identities of the sect's founding elders when they cultivated on a daily basis. Fang Xing was one of them, and since he had to study at number 60 high school, it was even more rare for them to see him. This time, he appeared in his female form in a long, snow-white dress, and his graceful figure deeply shocked everyone present. Some of the disciples whispered to each other below. What's this great elder's name? Why haven't I seen him before? Don't look up for too long. It's too rude. This is the legendary elder Fang Xing. So it's her, the founding great elder with no profile picture on Battle's sect's website. Yes. She's been here since the founding of the sect. Battle's sect's founding great elders can't compare to ordinary peak elders. Even seniors who were later promoted to great elder have to be reverent to the founding great elders. At this point, the surrounding disciples all lowered their heads when they heard this. Everyone's faces were filled with respect and excitement. This was the founding great elder of the sect's founding great elders. How honorable his status was. It was rumored that all of them were existences who usually chatted and laughed with grenade-throwing sect leader. At this moment, sects battle. Battle's sect was Battle's sect's battle sect Battle's sect had been battle and sect was by the sect. This proved that the Battle's sect's internal management system was very strict, and the management levels were very clear. Under the situation where the disciples at the bottom couldn't see the great elder at the top, it was indeed very easy for them to be able to see it at the juncture of a group battle. Sects SS battle. S is Battle's sect. S. Fang Xing waited for a moment until everyone had quieted down before she opened her mouth. In her female form, her voice was cold, beautiful, and dignified. I believe some of you have already heard that our target this time is Songhai City's Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute. Everyone knows that Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute is an official organization that specializes in gathering outstanding young cultivators from all over the country. As the saying goes, the country is strong when the young are strong. The Essence Search Institute's role is to gather young cultivation geniuses and nurture them so that they can be included in the system in the future to win glory for the country and become the mainstay of our Huaxiu nation. It can be said that Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute is a pillar of support for the rise of young people. And now, according to reliable information, a group of criminals has invaded Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute right under our noses. They have extraordinary strength and a lot of people. Everyone from Battle's sect, I want to ask, what are you going to do? The disciples in the square looked at each other in dismay for a while. Then, someone shouted, of course. I can't live under the same sky as evil. As soon as his voice fell, the surrounding disciples clenched their fists and shouted in unison, one after another, the crowd was stirred up. I can't live under the same sky as evil. I can't live under the same sky as evil. Fang Xing nodded in satisfaction, then waved his hand abruptly. On my command, let's go. At the same time, in Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute, Ting Luken still didn't know what was going to happen. He stared at the screen with great interest as he quietly studied Wang Ling's face. He wanted to see how Wang Ling would perform when surrounded by spirit beasts. This group of criminals' sudden attack had actually done him a huge favor, giving him the opportunity to properly test Wang Ling's true strength. Now that he was about to succeed, Ting Luken was full of excitement. After all, this matter hadn't alarmed the police at the moment, and no one knew that Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute was currently being held hostage. As long as he could confirm Wang Ling's strength, he would immediately counterattack and suppress this group of criminals. This little guy is really good at hiding things. He believed that his eyes weren't wrong. Wang Ling was definitely the peerless genius he had been looking for all this time. At that moment, the oasis was already surrounded by a large number of high-grade spirit beasts. Because the criminals had requested that the sound be turned off, Ting Luken couldn't hear the situation inside the oasis for the time being. But at the same time, he noticed that at Six-Eyed Red Heezy's call, almost all the elite high school students had been mobilized. This was also a rare piece of information. It seemed that this Six-Eyed Red Heezy had been hiding all this time, and hadn't had this kind of rallying power at all. And the change in rallying power from before to now was also due to Wang Ling's arrival. Ting Luken felt that this was even more proof of his theory. Because at the same time, he had also noticed that this Six-Eyed Red Heezy had a brief exchange with Wang Ling. In other words, perhaps the real mastermind behind the scenes was Wang Ling. It was possible that Six-Eyed Red Heezy was just passing on orders. Come on. Classmate Wang Ling, Ting Luken's face was calm as he said this in his heart. His mind was filled with thoughts as he constantly tried to figure out everything about Wang Ling. Just as he was staring intently at the screen, all of a sudden, the alarm in Nine Heavens Essence Academy rang. None of the alarms had been set off when the criminals had invaded earlier, but at this important moment, they sounded like a symphony. At that moment, Nine Heavens Essence Academy was already surrounded by all the Battle Sect disciples. The whole building had been sealed off by the Battle Sect disciples. Not a single person could escape from the building. What's going on? The criminal leader who was holding Ting Luken back with the golden wind was also startled. He still hadn't figured out what was going on. Behind him, there was suddenly a loud boom from the command room's door. Immediately after that, dozens of Battle Sect disciples directly rushed in. And the person leading the charge was Fang Xing in her female form. Each and every one of them raised their spirit swords as if they had been injected with chicken blood and shouted excitedly. Control the criminals. Save Elder Teng. Kill. I can't live under the same sky as evil. Ting Luken. Chapter 1939. Ting Luken had never expected a large number of Battle Sect disciples to pour into the command post. Not only that, the power supply to the command post had also been cut off. The moment the Battle Sect disciples had poured in, all the electronic equipment on the scene, including the surveillance cameras, had been instantly shut down, and the place was plunged into darkness. Behave yourself. Don't resist. These Battle Sect disciples were all elites. They had clearly come prepared, and had used their contact lenses with night vision to accurately rescue every researcher on the scene. It had been less than a minute since the power had been cut off and the backup power had been turned on. When the lights in the command post came back on, Fang Xing had already knocked out the criminal leader with the golden wind. Peak rank 9 true immortal. Ting Luken frowned. He had never seen Fang Xing in female form, but from his clothes, he could already tell that he was an elder of Battle Sect. At this realm, he was probably a great elder. He realized that he had underestimated Battle Sect's intelligence-gathering ability, and felt that he had done it flawlessly. He had originally planned to sound Wang Ling out, but this time, it just so happened that these blind criminals had attacked, and he had taken advantage of the situation to carry out his plan. For this reason, Ting Lu Ken had been very careful during the hijacking, and at the same time, he had completely blocked out the news. Logically speaking, even the police didn't know that the Ninth Heaven Command Post had been hijacked. But Battle's sect had received the news in advance and had sent people here. This made Ting Lu Ken feel that the situation had suddenly become very unusual. "Greetings, Senior Tang, we have come on the sect leader's orders. I am Battle's sect's great elder. You can call me Little Fong, Elder Tang." Fong Xing bowed politely with his hands in front of him, and no one could find anything wrong with his smile. Ting Lu Ken was a little annoyed because Battle's sect's intervention had actually ruined his plan, but in this situation, he could only suffer in silence. After a long while, he finally cleared his throat and said, "It's fine, Little Fong, you've worked hard, Elder Tang, I've already checked. This golden wind is fake." After saying that, Fong Xing handed the pistol to Ting Lu Ken with both hands. "Elder Tang, you're still working so hard at this late hour. You might be tired, so please get some rest. Although cultivators can go without sleep, Elder Tang is the pillar of the sect, so you should take care of your body." Ting Tianyuan's mouth twitched when he heard this. He could roughly tell that this Elder Fong from the Battle sect was obviously implying something. How could a pillar of support like him not be able to tell that the golden wind was fake? Since they could tell that it was fake, they pretended to be held hostage. Wasn't it obvious that they had other motives? Ting Lu Ken felt a bit sullen. He looked at the pitch-black screen behind him and sighed in his heart. When he reopened the screen, he found that the battle in the spirit realm had already ended. After Wang Ming received Battle sect's order to go and rescue them, he immediately adjusted the code and used the spirit world system to transport away the high-level spirit beasts that had been transferred from the other maps. In other words, it would not be strange if any of the elite high school students killed the remaining spirit beasts. What a pity. Just a little more, and he might have been able to see Wang Ling make a move with his own eyes. However, although the power of the surveillance equipment had been cut off, the spirit world system was still operating normally. In other words, during the black screen just now, the internal monitor was still operating. Ting Lu Ken felt that there might be some new information about Wang Ling in there. He would have to think of a way to retrieve this information later. Even if the image hadn't been preserved, there would at least be a recording. He had been suspicious of Wang Ling for a long time, and wouldn't give up on investigating him so easily. Furthermore, given the current situation, Ting Lu Ken even suspected that Battle sect's sudden operation to break out of the command post and rescue them might very well be a cover-up. It might even be to cover up Wang Ling's actions. All of this was too much of a coincidence, as if it had been planned, which made Ting Lu Ken very suspicious. After thinking for a bit, Ting Lu Ken pretended to be unperturbed on the surface. He waved his hand to summon a staff member, who put the golden wind into a plastic envelope. "I'll leave this toy in your care for the time being." "Very well, Elder Tang." The staff member nodded. "Have you called the police?" Ting Lu Ken asked. The staff member glanced at Fong Xing. The police cars arrived at the same time Elder Fong broke out of the encirclement. The outside of the command post is now completely surrounded. Hearing this, Ting Lu Ken was silent for a moment. He could only scratch his head and silently say, "Forget it," in his heart before he left the command post. It wasn't convenient for him to directly explain the surveillance footage here. Ting Lu Ken already suspected that there was a mole in the command center who was passing on information due to Battle sect's sudden operation just now. He already didn't trust anyone. It was safest to hand over the surveillance footage and audio recordings to Jing Hechio, who would then hand them over to him. There were really too many suspicious points. Ting Lu Ken thought it was funny. When he reached the main entrance of the command post, he suddenly saw a familiar figure. It was Audiobook, who was being interviewed by the media and under the frenzied flashes of countless cameras. He had almost forgotten. Audiobook also had an actual connection to Battle sect. In essence, he was Battle sect's founding great elder, but it was just a title of honor and had no real connection to his actual position. He remembered that Audiobook had been sent by Huaxiao Alliance to inspect and supervise Battle sect, which was perfectly justifiable. Furthermore, Battle's sect itself was under Huaxiao Alliance's jurisdiction. Although Battle's sect had foiled his plan this time, Ting Luken realized that he really couldn't blame it on Battle's sect. After all, the gangsters had taken over Nine Heavens' Essence Courtyard's command post, which was a very serious matter. Furthermore, Battle's sect had previously signed an official city security agreement with Huaxiao Alliance. This was actually a very common move everywhere, and was mainly to share the burden of the cultivation police system. However, sects that could sign this kind of agreement had to be at least sky level. Before the interview was over, Audiobook saw Ting Luken, and he hurriedly had the deputy director take over the interview as he jogged over. "Greetings, old Ting." He bowed to Ting Luken and said respectfully, "I heard that this group of gangsters were very fierce." Looking at old Ting, this junior can rest assured that you weren't injured. "Heh, you're well informed." Ting Luken laughed dryly. "I'll say this up front, even if you're unaccountably solicitous, this old man won't be able to help much with the election of the new leader of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools. The position of leader depends on one's own ability." "This junior can't thank old Ting enough for your concern," Audiobook said with a smile. Ting Luken sighed and could only leave with a flick of his sleeves. He frowned deeply. Suspicious, everything was too suspicious. Chapter 1940. Audiobook had been covering for so long, but this was the first time he felt a sense of crisis. He felt that Ting Luken was very dangerous, more dangerous than anyone he had met before. Not only that, he even felt that he might have exposed himself in trying to save Wang Ling this time. This elder Ting wasn't someone who would be so easily fooled. Audiobook sighed emotionally in his heart. After Elder Ting left, he immediately entered Battle's Sect's core group chat to report on his work. "Elder Ting has already left, but my intuition tells me that he won't give up on investigating Shifu so easily." Lotus Sun was especially concerned about this matter, and replied almost immediately, "I asked Grandpa just now, but he doesn't know much about Elder Ting. What we can confirm, however, is that Elder Ting's relationship with Lord Yuan Venerate isn't ordinary. After all, he's someone from that era, so it's very normal." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, "Everyone, continue to be vigilant. If Brother Ling isn't careful this time, I'm afraid he'll be exposed." Lotus Sun, "Of course, I'll think of a way to keep this matter under wraps later. By the way, I have to thank classmate Fang Xing this time, for all. Fang Xing, don't mention it, it's all part of my job. Wang Ling's business is also my business." At this point, although the atmosphere in the group seemed harmonious on the surface, everyone was sweating profusely in private. Although they had barely managed to deal with Battle Sect's sudden operation this time, it was just as Audiobook had thought. It was precisely because their operation this time had been too abrupt that Elder Ting thought it was a way to cover up their tracks. By the time Ting Luken returned to Nine Heavens' tea house, Jing Hechio had already used the creation spell and the star shifting array to repair the damaged area. Nine Heavens' tea house was an important location, and usually had a backup of the same building materials, so when it was damaged, it could be easily repaired using magic. At that moment, the tea house's door was tightly shut. Jing Hechio bowed to Ting Luken, who didn't look too good. "Elder Ting, because of an accident in the first batch of students who didn't take the test, follow-up tests have already been arranged. The students who have already entered the spirit world have also successfully passed the internal test and returned. However, looking at old Ting's expression, it seems like he hasn't found the answer he wants." Ting Luken sat on a wooden bench with his eyebrows tightly furrowed. After thinking for a long time, he looked at Jing Hechio and slowly said, "What do you think about the Battle Sect's sudden arrival?" "I always feel that it's very sudden." "It feels like he's hiding something," Jing Hechio answered honestly. Hearing this, Ting Luken suddenly laughed. "Not bad, you've improved a bit. The Battle Sect's actions this time have exposed the truth that they are trying to hide. However, as for what they are trying to hide, this old man still lacks evidence." "So, Elder Ting is still suspecting Student Wang? What do you think?" "I think he's nothing special. There's nothing special about him. Even my entry into the spiritual realm this time was thanks to Lichangja. Did you see it clearly? Did he stick himself onto Lichangja's body and get in? I saw it clearly. There's no mistaking it. Jing Hechio said, furthermore, Elder Tang, don't you think that for the battle sect to carry out such a large-scale operation to protect a high school student, isn't it a bit too unrealistic? You're right. That's the logic of a normal person. Ting Luken smiled and paused. He originally wanted to say, but sometimes, things aren't what they seem. But in the end, he couldn't open his mouth. However, Ting Luken still firmly believed that his judgment was correct. Wang Ling was the young man he had been looking for all this time. It was just that right now, he still lacked crucial evidence. This internal test in the spirit realm was actually a double-edged sword. On the way back to the Nine Heavens tea house, Ting Luken had already come up with a counter-analysis hypothesis. If Battle Sec's operation this time really was to provide cover for Wang Ling, in that case, Battle Sec definitely already knew that all of his plans were aimed at Wang Ling. In other words, the War Sec's actions this time seemed to have alerted the enemy, but they were too rash. At the same time, his actions were also exposed in broad daylight during this test. But Ting Luken wasn't flustered at all, because exposing his true intentions through this internal test in the spirit realm was also within his calculations. Have you obtained the recording of the internal test in the spirit realm? Not yet, but I've already secured the data inside the server. I'll personally copy and transfer it later to ensure that nothing goes wrong. Well done. Ting Luken nodded. Remember, you can only report this directly to me. You don't need to go through anyone else. Understood? Yes, Elder Tang. Jing Hechio nodded. It's just that there's something I don't understand, and I don't know if I should say it. Ting Luken, you want to ask me why I'm so obsessed with this Wang Ling? Jing Hechio nodded. Yes. He really didn't understand. Given Ting Luchen's status, why would he waste so much precious time on such an ordinary high school student? What was more, Jing Hechio felt that he had some ability to identify talents. His realm wasn't low, and after following Ting Luken for so many years, he had seen a lot of geniuses of all shapes and sizes. But he was sure that Wang Ling definitely wasn't the person he or Ting Luken were looking for. A cultivator who only knew how to consume puffy food wasn't good for cultivation at all. I still need some time to verify this question. When the time is right, this old man will naturally tell you. Ting Luken kept Jing Hechio guessing as he said, in all these years, I've never been wrong. I hope so. Jing Hechio said. Before Ting Luken left Nine Heavens tea house, he was still skeptical. And after sending Jing Hechio off, Ting Luken also started on the next step of his plan. Earlier, he had guessed that this spirit realm test would be a double-edged sword, exposing both sides. And his intention to deliberately expose himself to test Wang Ling was also part of the plan. This definitely wasn't something Ting Luken had said casually. As soon as Jing Hechio left, Ting Luken walked up to the tea shelves in the tea house. The shelves were filled with small pots of fragrant tea, all of which had been carefully selected works by great masters. He touched one of the hexagonal ceramic teapots and changed the angle of the teapot. Then, there was the sudden hum of a mechanism being activated on the tea shelves. Behind the teapots, a wall covered with photos and stickers appeared. This was all the information that Ting Luken had collected over the years. Each and every one of them was closely related to Wang Ling. At that moment, Ting Luken personally added the latest piece of information to the wall. Battle Sec suspects that I am testing Wang Ling, if I lose my memory in the future. That means that all the suspicions recorded on this wall are correct answers. This note was written by Ting Luken on January 15, 4397, 3:48 in the morning. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.